Maybe one of the kindest things we can say about the religious is that they're confused. Most of them are just out of their ever-loving gourds, but we'll be nice and just say confused. Can we fix their confusion? No, because they're terrified to talk to us. They're terrified to actually consider what we say. They'd rather live in their insulated echo chambers where they say all the crazy parts in their heads and nobody notices just how insane it is. And this is kind of an example. So let's get to it. This is a video from Jerry Brandt, who I've never heard of, and probably you haven't either. The title is confusing, but we'll get to that pretty soon. This is what happens when people don't understand how to use proper grammar or punctuation, which, yeah, most young people have no clue these days, but you'd think that somebody as old as Jerry, he has to know better, but, yeah. Like I said, you'll see. He's going to talk to us about friends or family or atheists or something. Maybe all of it, I don't know. I guess we'll just have to see.
Another application of the questions in Ford applies to family or friends.
Oh look, another video that just starts in the middle of a thought. I mean, we're used to that, right? At least it wasn't in the middle of a sentence, or worse yet, a word. So what I get from this, and that's only from looking at the description, is that this is about questions to ask friends and family members who happen to be atheists. I could be completely wrong about that, I don't know, and I don't know that it really matters. A question is a question, but if this is how he wants to do it, okay, sure, why not? We like doing questions for atheists, right? I don't really understand his title for this video because it's incoherent. It's 3C Questions Family or Friends and Atheists. Okay, this might be video 3C. I'm kind of with you so far. The rest, though, that's just gobbledygook. Those are words that don't actually go together in a coherent sentence. But I guess we shouldn't be overly critical, so get on with it, Jerry.
Now, if I'm with a family member, mom, dad, cousin, uncle, sister, whoever it might be, or somebody I work with, I see them every day, and it's a longer ongoing relationship, I have to change the way I use Ford. If I started out with my dad saying, hey, tell me about your family, I don't want to do that. So the logical thing is I just ask questions that get me updated.
This is really why I hate Christians just reading from a script. You'd think that a normal, rational person would understand that, but I have talked to theists who are actually holding a script in their hands and just reading from it. If you don't have a solid understanding of what you're doing, then you probably shouldn't be doing it at all, right? I'm not saying it's a bad thing to have an organized system, a plan going into it so that you don't look like a complete idiot, but you have to internalize this thing and understand its efficacy. This guy shouldn't have to tell people, don't ask about your family if you're talking to your father. Does he really think that his followers are so stupid that they wouldn't understand that? Actually, I wouldn't be surprised, would you?
So let's say it's my uncle and I haven't seen him for a week or a month or whatever. Say, Uncle Bob, how's the family doing? So I still follow Ford, but how's the family? How are the kids? I heard your wife was sick. Is she, Aunt Mary, is she doing better? And then I go on to O.
Okay, we can all see what you're doing here. You are trying to disarm the other person before you get into the hardcore Jesus crap. Well, they'll never see it coming. Yeah, I don't think that's very honest, sorry. Plus, you actually have to have a system to be conversational with other human beings. That's kind of sad, isn't it? If you remember, STR kind of pulls the same thing, and so does Frank Turek, where they have icebreaker questions that make it seem, since we all know that they really don't, like they're actually interested in you as a human being. They're just not. This is just one more notch in their theological bedpost, but they can make believe, right? I mean, that's all they're doing with any of it anyway. But with family, people you know, that shouldn't be necessary. You ought to already have a working relationship with these people. Why is that part of your system to do this with people who you shouldn't need a system with? Oh, right, this guy is selling a system, isn't he? At least that's how it feels. I don't know if that's actually true. Didn't see the last couple of videos. All right, whatever. Get on with your sales pitch, Jerry. We'll just rip it apart.
How are things going at work? I know you were sort of fearing getting laid off. Is everything going okay? So I'm getting caught up. I'm showing interest in them. And then there's one of two routes with R.
All right, the same goes for O as did with F. It's entirely unnecessary. Now, sure, for strangers to try to set them at ease, you might want to do some of these things. And this guy, I figure he's just trying to use the same system on everyone, even where it clearly does not apply, which is probably why he's at 2 upvotes and 13 downvotes on this video as I'm writing this, but, whatever. This really comes off like a slimy door-to-door salesman, and I've talked about a couple of encounters with those. People who just can't understand what no means. People who can't understand that there's no sale here. Why are you continuing to bother people? Because they're just mindlessly doing their job, whether they're wasting everyone's time or not. It feels just like that. And for people who are trying to sell things, be it religion or otherwise, you're just being a jerk. Stop it. Move on to someone else who might be more receptive. Better yet, get a real job. Pissing people off is not a good sales strategy. Just saying.
One route might be, I know nothing about his religious background if he has any. I've been around him a lot of my life, but I've never experienced if he has a religious background. So I might ask him something like this. I've never picked up an indication as to whether you're involved with any kind of religious group.
If he wanted you to know, he'd probably have already told you. See, something like that would immediately send up a lot of red flags with me. This is not the kind of thing that comes up in normal conversations. That's the kind of question that only comes up from somebody who wants to convert me to their cult, which of course, that's exactly what he's trying to do. Because here's the thing. If you are related to this person, or if you are friends with this person, then either it's going to come up in the course of normal conversation, or it's none of your damn business. They might not say anything because they don't want you to know. Ever think of that? See, I don't go around just asking my friends what their religion is. If they want me to know, they'll tell me. I'll be honest, I don't really care. Now, I do know that pretty much nobody I surround myself with these days is religious. Not that I go and excise the religious from my life on purpose, but in the circles that I tend to travel in, religious people just don't tend to spend a whole lot of time there. It wasn't a plan, it was just the result. So this is still a big failure so far, and he's 3 steps into his presumably 4-step program. Let's see if he can make it, I don't know, a failure quadfecta? That would be fun.
And they might be, but they only go on Sundays, or they're very inactive in it, or maybe he had been raised in something. So I asked them, I don't know, do you have any kind of religious background? And he'll tell me whatever it is, and then I proceed as I would with anyone else.
Let's pause here for a second, though, before he gets to his D. Because if this was me that he was talking about, and I know I'm a special case here, but one of 2 things would be happening. Either I would just be rolling my eyes and saying, go the hell away, which I absolutely have had family members that I've done that with. Some might remember an aunt and uncle that I had many years ago who were professional missionaries and who literally couldn't hold a 2-minute conversation on any topic without bringing Jesus into it. They alienated the entire family and drove their own son away because they were so obnoxious about it. Those are people I have no problem at all telling them to go pound sand, family or no, as vehemently as necessary. On the other hand, I might take it as an opportunity to get into counter-apologetics. Oh, please give me your religious spiel and I'll debunk every last bit of it. And I've done that before too. And you know something? It actually has a pretty decent chance of planting the seeds of atheism in the mind of believers. It's certainly not a guarantee of success, of course, but at least it kind of gets the idea in there that their beliefs are complete bunk. Anyway, on to D, I hope.
Or it may be very obvious. I've been around him long enough to know that he is a member of some cult or some other religious group by their practices, by the things he says. And so I can say, it's been obvious to me, it appears anyway, that you've been active in such and such group in your life.
Or not. You can't always predict these things. That doesn't usually go well either. I don't like the cult you're in, so let me tell you about the cult I'm in. Yeah, nobody really wants to get into that, do they? If you actually respect your friends or family members, then you'll just keep your mind poisoned to yourself. But most of the time, they don't actually care about anyone but themselves, right? But I'm trying to save your souls. No, you're not. Not really. You're just trying to make yourself feel better about the things that you believe, and it feels bad to have other people in your life, especially in your close circle of relationships, who don't believe the same things that you do. This is about your own personal comfort, not about helping others. They might lie to themselves about it, but it's just not true.
Well, how'd you get started with them, and how long have you been involved with them? And what does being a part of that mean to you? So I'm showing interest in asking questions. At the end of that, whichever route I go, I still come back to D.
Finally, at least we're finally going to get there. I was afraid we weren't going to. Honestly, though, this all feels so disingenuous, doesn't it? Reading your little script, trying to distract them from your true purpose, and then hitting them with whatever D is. We'll hopefully find out in a second. And you'll notice that his question, how does that make you feel? Yeah, because that's all religion is. It's an emotional bubble that these people embrace because it makes them feel good. It doesn't matter if any of it is true. I can't tell you the last time that I had any theist that I've encountered in the wild actually try to make a case based on fact. It's always fee-fees and faith, right? Well, here's how I feel. I don't care how you feel. I care what you can demonstrate with objective evidence is actually true. And I've noticed that if you make that clear up front, they are much more likely to run away because they can't handle you if you're not running on pure fee-fees and faith, just like they are. So if that's what you're after, just ask for the evidence and say you don't care about their feelings. They'll just leave skid marks. Anyhow, finally on to D. Maybe.
I'd like to ask you a tough question. Ask everybody this. Doesn't matter what their background is. In light of your background, do you feel like you've come to the place you could say for sure that if you were to die today, you'd go to heaven?
Prove heaven exists, because that'll get you a deer in the headlights look, right? Because they have no answers to that. They're really looking for people who are predisposed to their religious beliefs, even if they don't exactly hold them. They are after people who really want a God to be real. But don't you want to believe in God? Nope. No interest. And that just leaves them with their jaws hanging open because they don't know what to say to that. In a lot of cases, they will immediately start to make excuses and disengage. At least then, the people who aren't serious. They're just following a script like this guy is touting and expecting a standard response. I never give them anything that they're expecting. Nope, I don't want a God. I don't want to go to heaven. I don't care about anything unless you can show me that these things are real with demonstrable, verifiable evidence. Most of them don't even know what to say to that. They either flee or do whatever they can to get back on their script. Don't let that happen.
And then I just carry that out the same with anybody else. But that's a little bit of an adaptation for family or friends, work associates, that I know their F and I know their O.
Then it's not Ford, is it? It's Erd. That doesn't really slip off the tongue, does it? Now, yes, it is obvious that we are getting into the middle of his presentation, but I went back and I looked at the rest, and I don't really think we're missing anything by starting here. We're also ending here as far as I'm concerned, because this isn't going to convince anyone who isn't already predisposed toward faith to change their minds, especially since it's also absurdly mechanical. It's like asking your wife, so tell me about your family or your career. I mean, how dumb do you have to be? If you don't already know these things, then you've got some problems, don't you? Now, that was the first part, I guess a decent intro, but now we're going to get into other things. Maybe that's where the real meat of this lies, because so far it just hasn't been at all impressive, has it? This is just your bog standard how to talk to an atheist thing, and those never go well. Maybe Jerry's going to surprise us. I don't know, but I wouldn't be holding my breath.
Let me tell you about what to do with atheists. When you're visiting with somebody and you talk about family and occupation and outside activities, and then you ask somebody, you know, do you have any religious background? And they say, well, I'm an atheist or agnostic, whichever it would be. That used to scare me, and just, I didn't know what to do that, because I always assumed anybody who was an atheist was an intellectual and they knew a whole lot more about everything than I did, and I was in over my head.
A lot of the times, that's true, though. Because if you look at surveys and studies, atheists and Jews tend to know a whole lot more about religion than your regular religious believer does. Atheists, I figure, because we've been there and finding our way out took work and research, and Jews because, well, it's just self-defense, isn't it? Other religions have been out there trying to kill them forever, so knowing your enemy is probably a pretty good idea if you hope to avoid the inevitable knife in the back. That's kind of the problem, though. If you've ever done a lot of talking with the religious, because you know that the vast majority of them are really dumb. And that's not an insult, that's just the truth. I've been looking for a single smart theist for years, and I've still come up empty. Not a smart person who's also religious and keeps it separate through compartmentalization. I mean a smart theist who applies the same standards and the same rigors that apply to everything else in their lives into their own religious beliefs. No faith, no fifis, just pure evidence that led them to the rational conclusion that there really is a God and something that they can present to others. I'd really love to find that person, but I just don't think they exist.
I found something out. I'm not afraid of atheists anymore, and you don't need to be afraid of them either. I've learned that behind every atheist is one of 4 basic stories.
Oh, this'll be good. How much do you want to bet that none of what he's about to say is going to describe us? Because I haven't seen it yet, but I'm happy to play the game together. What kind of religious straw man are we going to get? Place your bets now. Go ahead and pause. Post it down in the comments, because I don't think this is going to be at all impressive.
Most people are an atheist for one of 4 reasons. 1, they were educated into being an atheist.
Sorry, that's not me. Now, it would be interesting to see if he'd admit that the overwhelming majority of Christians are only Christians because they were indoctrinated that way. They've never done any actual research on their own. They've never read the entire Bible on their own. They don't know what it is they're supposed to believe. They were just told when they were young, before they reached the age of reason, that it was true, and therefore they believe that it's true. I wonder what he'd say to that. That'll be interesting to find out. Anyhow, the first one doesn't apply to me at all. I was a Christian for a very long time. I was a committed Christian. I was a serious Christian. I was on fire for the Lord. Not anymore. So let's see if he has something to say about this before we move on to number 2.
Maybe in their science classes in high school or college, or a philosophy class or some other history class, somebody taught them. It could have been a teacher, could have been a parent, it could have been a friend who leaned in that direction, and so they just pushed them in that direction, led them in that direction. So they were educated into it.
You mean like theists do, right? Send your kids to a religious school, and granted, I did that. I was there, so that you never learn anything outside of the Christian mindset. It's like he's looking in a mirror, right? I have never seen anyone brainwashed into being an atheist, like they have been into being a theist. Of course, that relies on what I've personally seen, and if you've seen different, then by all means, let us know down in the comments because we all have different experiences. Provide some details because I can't even imagine how this might be done. But then again, what do I know, right?
A second category is somebody who had a bad experience with a church or religion, and they just decided to write it off. If that's what it's all about, I want nothing to do with it.
Oh yeah, we knew this one was coming. This is also not me because I've never had a bad experience with religion. Looking back, all of my experiences were generally positive. Nice people, no problems. My pastor never touched me inappropriately. It wasn't the church that made me leave. It was the fact that none of the beliefs were demonstrably true, and I cared about the truth a whole lot more than they did. When I brought up my doubts to the clergy, they told me to stop thinking about it. God's real because I say so. You just have to have faith. Except by that point, all my faith was gone, and I was headed out the door into reality. Maybe something might have gone differently if they had tried to justify their beliefs with fact, if they'd had any evidence to present, but none of them did. None of them even tried. So, still, not me.
Some become atheists because they have a bad experience in life. They've suffered some loss or something.
Not me. Never had a problem. It wasn't experiences at all that drove me from religion, but the complete and utter lack of any evidence that any of it was defensibly and demonstrably true. The truth is what matters, and religion didn't have any of that. So that's 3 down, and none of them are even close. He's probably going to say something more about this, so I guess we'll wait, but I'm kind of curious what his number 4 is going to be. How about you?
And they were trying to figure out if there's a God of love, and why did he let this happen? This is bad. So this happened and it's bad, so there can't be a God of love or he wouldn't have let this happen. So I just dismiss God.
I see no reason to think that there is a God of any kind in the first place. What we're really looking at here are bald rationalizations. They are desperate to explain away all the reasons that people are actually walking away from their beliefs, and they can't accept the actual reasons that there just isn't any evidence for any of it, so they just make up more comforting nonsense because none of this is about the truth. None of this is about facts. This is just about spinning the most comforting yarn that you can. This is damage control. This is trying to keep as many butts in the pews as they can so they can keep making as much money as they can because they don't want to go out and get real jobs. It is ridiculously obvious what's going on, and it's sad that they can't see it.
Or the fourth major reason, I'm going to have to change my lifestyle. I can't keep doing what I'm doing the way I do it, when I do it, how I want to do it, and with whomever I want to do it.
Yeah, I should have guessed that one. Again, not me. Almost nothing changed between me leaving religion and today. I rejected it because of the complete lack of evidence to support any of it, and I continued to hold the vast majority of the same views, with the sole exception of things that I accepted only based on my religion. Those I reevaluated and adopted views based on reality, not on religion. Otherwise, people who knew me then, if they're still kicking out there, they'd still recognize me as generally being the same as I was when I was religious. I'm not a bigot against gay people. I don't hate women. I don't hate trans people. But those were only based on God hates them. So I got rid of that. But pretty much everything else, yep, that's me still. So let's finish out the last of this fourth point and take a break for a week because this is really starting to make me shake my head.
So I know enough. I do not want to give up my way of life. So it's easier just to get rid of God rather than have to deal with those changes.
Except in my case, that didn't happen. Oh, sure, for things like disliking gay people because God says they're bad, that went away because once you take God out of the picture, there is no way to rationally justify that any longer. People are just people. It's not what people are, it's what they do that matters. It's why I don't hate, and hate is really too strong a word for it. maybe strongly dislike, disapprove of, I don't know. But it's why I don't hate Muslims or Hindus or whatever else anymore. Now, the stupid crap they do, yes, hate the sin, not the sinner, that kind of thing. I don't much care what people do in the privacy of their own homes, so long as it's legal and consensual. It doesn't bother me one bit. I might not have to respect it, but I don't hate it. I might not ride you around on my shoulders, but I don't really give a crap what you do. As long as what you are doing doesn't affect me or those I care about or society in general, have fun. That's not something that you can really do as a theist, though, at least most of the time. So that changed. But it had nothing at all to do with who I really am. I just stopped being a religious asshole when I jettisoned all the religious crap. And I think that's a good thing. And that's where we're going to leave it for the week. Otherwise, this is going to get really, really long. So far, nothing that he said really impresses me. It's a lot of bog standard theist talking points aimed straight at others who already believe, probably so he can sell a book or a course or whatever. I don't know if he's doing that. I didn't go look, but that's what most of them are trying to do. Now, granted, I haven't done the other videos in this series, but just based on what happens in 3B, because that was the only one that showed up in my recommendations, none of these things are really any better. They're not saying anything that we couldn't get out of this, that we couldn't glean out of just this part. So that's why I didn't feel the need to go back and start off with 3A, because, whatever, we do enough crap around here already. Sometimes starting at the beginning of something doesn't really help, and I really can't imagine that it would have here, but what the heck do I know, right? Anyway, that's it. What kind of vibes are you getting off of this so far? Let me know down in the comments. Clearly, this is someone who doesn't understand atheism and hasn't talked to any actual atheists, but I think we understand that as generally true across the religious board. They don't know anything, and since they're only talking to each other, that never gets corrected. They're just wrong a lot, but that's hardly a surprise, right? So we'll come back and revisit this again next week. Any predictions for what comes up next? Let's see how psychic you all are. For me, though, until next week, I'm out. Why are the religious so ignorant about atheism? I mean, they're ignorant about pretty much everything when it comes to religion, but atheists are just the boogeymen that they make up in their heads and don't actually run any of their conclusions past any actual atheists, do they? So why do they do that? Maybe we'll find that out today, so stick around. We're back with Jerry Brandt, and this time he's going to talk about atheism. Well, he's going to talk about his own made-up version of atheism, because I'm willing to bet that it isn't all as cut and dried as he tries to present it, because this isn't how reality actually works. This is more pandering to the religious audience and telling them what it is they want to hear, often in exchange for money, instead of the stark reality that's going to make them sad and end those donations rolling in. But let's get back into it and see how it goes.
So when people say, in response to my question, what's your religious background? I'm an atheist. I've changed my strategy.
I'm willing to bet that your new strategy isn't any better than your old one, but I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt if I can. You have to remember that the whole point of his Ford system is to convert people to his religion, or at least his version of Christianity, whatever. Now, I don't know what his specific methodology is. Hopefully, we'll find that out in a second. But unless it involves direct, demonstrable evidence for a real existing deity that you can show to people who don't believe what you do, then it's not going to convince atheists at all. Granted, the religious don't understand that because they think that everyone is just like they are. Gullible, overly emotional, and desperate for an imaginary father figure in the sky to watch over them because they're effectively children with stunted emotional growth. But that's not us. Mostly, although, yeah, there are some, but not generally when it comes to gods. So let's see what his new strategy is. I'm not betting it would be effective against me.
I didn't know what to do before, but you know what I do now? I just lean forward a little bit and I say, well, that's interesting. Tell me, how did you become an atheist?
I've got an answer for that, and it's an answer that they just don't like. I became an atheist because Christianity couldn't stand up to any kind of rational, critical scrutiny. There was no defensible evidence that any of it was actually true. Once you get rid of the double standard that they rely on, it all comes crashing down. And they hate that. And I've had it tried on me before, and the second that I tell them that, and then just sit back and wait expectantly that they will defend their own views, they just start to make some excuses, don't they? It's always some appointment they've forgotten or something like that. This is very easy to turn back on them, and that makes them feel very uncomfortable. That makes them want to disengage. It's kind of funny to watch, especially when they realize that their standard crap isn't working. When you are better versed in their arguments than they are, when you can see it all coming a mile away and are ready for it, they tend to lean into the flight side of the fight or flight response. They don't know what to do with that. If my book says a thing fails, what can they do? They're going to run away.
They're happy to tell me. I haven't had one yet that said, I don't want to talk about it. They never have anybody ask them that sincerely.
Sure we do. All the time. Not just the religious either. I have been asked why I became an atheist by other atheists. There is a genuine curiosity if our experiences are at all similar. So he's just wrong there, which is really no surprise. It's probably the most common question that I ever get from new people. If those people are religious, I usually never see them again. It's kind of funny how that works, right?
And so I'll ask them, how'd you become an atheist? And sometimes they had one of those bad experiences back there, so I'm just listening and paying attention, sincerely interested. And I listen to their story, however long they want to spend sharing it with me.
Mine is short and sweet, followed by just leaning back and waiting for them to show me where I was wrong. And I've never had one manage it yet. Now, sure, to some degree, this is a valid method since understanding each other is valuable, but it really doesn't matter in the end because the only thing that we ought to care about is whether there actually is a God. How you came to a conclusion means nothing if the conclusion isn't factually correct. Yes, it can show you how it can be done, but if it's just fifis and faith, you're just making a fool of yourself. And that's another reason that the religious don't want to talk to me, because I expect them to back up their claims with more than just fifis and faith. They just don't have any more than that, do they? They have claims and, well, it seems to me, and this is what I want to be true. But I don't care about any of that. I care what they can demonstrate is true in objective reality, and we all know they can't demonstrate a damn thing. They don't even try. I don't back down from the rational standards. I expect them to produce their evidence, and they never ever can.
I don't attack them. I don't quote the Bible verse, it says only a fool says in their heart there's no God. That would be a dumb approach at this point.
But it's a dumb approach all the time, since we don't care what your stupid book says. This is just one more way that they know they're not really serious. I've been threatened with hell. I've been lectured to out of the Bible. I've been told that Jesus loves me, none of which work since I don't believe in hell, gods, Jesus, and I don't care what your book says. You have to start at the very beginning and justify all of those things first with evidence before they're going to have any impact on me whatsoever. And of course, they don't have any way of doing that, do they? So we're right back at square one with them having nothing of any demonstrable substance to say, and me just sitting there waiting patiently for them to produce something. We don't have the same outlook. I do not want to believe. I'm not resistant to it if there is sufficient verifiable evidence that it's true. But there just isn't. It's their job to come up with something that will convince me. And my standards aren't that hard to meet. If the thing that they're talking about is real, then it should be pretty simple to do. It's just that the evidence says otherwise, and they don't like that, do they?
I have two basic things I do with atheists. The first approach is this. After listening to them, I'll ask them a question. Since you become an adult, have you ever had the opportunity to sit down with somebody and hear a clear presentation without pressure about what Christianity is really all about?
Yep, all the time. Every one of those presentations fails the rational sniff test. Because here's the thing, and this is a thing that they don't like. I don't care about the feelings involved. I care if the beliefs are actually true. And this is something that I've said before, but if there is an evil God out there, somebody who's going to torture us all for all eternity no matter what we do, I want to know that. I want to see the evidence to support it. I might not like the fact, but if it's a fact, I want to know. Anyone who makes a positive claim, they need to be able to back it up. And if the best they can do, and from experience I know that it is say, well, I just believe it, or I have faith, then they have failed in their burden of proof. They are not going to convince me doing that. And that's what sends them running for the hills, because not only do they not have any proof of anything that they're saying, and they need it, but they're terrified to get called out on it. So one question down. What's the other one?
Few of them have. And I know that before I even asked the question, because few Christians ever had anybody sit down with them before they became a Christian and give them a clear explanation of what it's all about. So most of them are going to say, no.
Well, I have. I have sat down with pastors. I've sat down with apologists. None of them have a good reason. They just have fifis in faith, and that is not remotely impressive. See, this is why the religious come up with scripts, and why, once you go off script, they try so hard to get you back into it. They don't really know how to respond to someone like me, someone who knows their religion as well or better than they do, who knows all of the arguments that they're likely to use, and is not remotely impressed. Someone who can answer all of their objections and silly unsupported claims. How do you know that? Well, they don't have answers, but it is fun to watch them squirm.
I've had some say that to me recently. And then I'll say, well, you know, if you would be interested, I'd be glad to get together with you and share these studies I have that will give you a clear explanation of what it's all about. And I'll explain the 4 studies we have, and we do one a week, and we get together, and there's no pressure.
I don't know what his studies are, but they're not evidence regardless. I'm assuming, based on the way that he said it, that they're Bible studies. Well, I don't care about the Bible. This is why a lot of theists treat their religions like a social club. What they believe, that doesn't really matter. It's what you can get out of it that does. It's why you'll get them claiming religious people live longer or whatever, which is entirely irrelevant because I only care if your claims are true. Even if that was true, and it's not because it ignores a lot of other factors involved, that doesn't make Christianity true. It's the truth that matters, not the benefits. I don't care if the KKK offers a great health plan. I'm not joining up if their claims aren't true, and they're not. This is a non-starter all around.
And some of them are interested. It surprises me, but everybody who's an atheist is not antagonistically opposed to God. They just haven't had the opportunity to hear a good reason to change and be anything else or to believe in God.
That's your excuse, and why I'm pretty sure that everything he's saying is just a load of BS. Because most atheists I know would love to engage in a serious back and forth conversation on the existence of God. We're not antagonistic toward any gods, we just don't believe that they're real. I mean, I just, moments ago, made that point again to a theist who showed up on Reddit and started claiming that Buddhism is useful. Well, I don't care about its utility, I care about its truth value. I care if it's real. Any of the supposed benefits you tout, I can get them elsewhere without having to sacrifice my intellectual integrity. Come back when you can show that it's true. Because until then, I'm not interested.
That's one approach. So if I use that and they say, well, that would be interesting, I'd be glad to do that, then we'll set up the studies. If I've sensed some body language or whatever that there's hesitancy, or they say, no, I'm really not interested in that, I go a little bit further if I sense it would be not pushing the envelope here too far. I say, I'd like to ask you a question.
Oh, good. Now, I have no clue what the question is going to be, but before he gets there, I just wanted to weigh in. While I would absolutely be willing to engage in a discussion with a theist, I do it all the time after all, but they ought to know going in that their standard arguments and their faith aren't going to get them anywhere with me. So even without knowing what his question is, I figure that's pretty much where I'm going to fall. Call it a psychic premonition or something. I'm really trying to think of anything that he could possibly say at this point that would make me think more positively about him or his religion, especially given some of the stuff he's already pulled. I don't think it's ever going to happen, but hey, I'm honest, let's find out, because I could be wrong. Believe it or not, I actually do like talking to these people, even if the discussions go nowhere useful.
It's sort of a tough question. But here it is. According to your understanding, what does the Bible say a person has to do to be sure that when they die, they'll go to heaven?
And that was a dumber question than I thought, because atheists don't give a damn what your Bible says. We don't believe in heaven. This is a totally irrelevant question to anybody with a brain. You'd have to prove to me that the Bible was worth something first and that heaven exists, and you don't even try to do that. These people just assume it without demonstrating it. Go ahead and do that first, but we all know that they can't and won't even try. See, this is where they always go so wrong, because they're just assuming that we're the same kind of gullible, brainless idiots that fill their pews on Sunday morning, when we're just not. We're not looking for God. We're looking for the facts. If God is a fact, and that needs to be demonstrated, but if God is a fact, then we will believe it. That question is best left until we are already convinced that any of this nonsense is real. And like I said, he's not even trying to do that. Now, I can give him an answer to that because I know the Bible, but it still means nothing. It's like asking him about the Hindu belief in Naraka. He's not going to care because he doesn't believe in any of it. It's not a relevant question, and I'd probably point that out to him if I was in that conversation. You can't start with faith and the Bible first. You have to come to a common ground where everyone accepts the same things, and that can't be done with questions. It has to be done with evidence.
And sometimes the response is, I don't believe in the Bible. I don't believe in heaven. I heard you. I assume that. Listen to the question again.
No, you listen to the response. The Bible and heaven are irrelevant until you can show that they are actually real. Yes, I can give you the answer, but quoting a book of mythology doesn't make it any less mythology. I can also tell you things about books of fiction. Spoiler alert, Harry Potter is the chosen one. But that doesn't make any of it worthwhile, and because we're coming at this from two entirely different perspectives, I don't know what you're trying to get at. Again, this is where I have to point out that we are not like you. We are not seeking emotional comfort through religious beliefs. We want the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And if you can't demonstrate that you have the truth, then this is a pointless conversation. I don't want to understand your perspective, except insofar as it can be shown to be factually correct. You need to start there, with the facts, not with questions that do nothing at all to justify that your belief is true. Get to the good stuff already. Leave the silly nonsense behind.
According to your understanding of what the Bible says, what does it say? I know you don't believe it. What does it say any person has to do to go to the heaven it talks about? Oh, well, you have to keep the 10 Commandments, go to church, give money. And I love to hear that.
Because it's wrong. But if they had quoted Acts 16, which says, "And brought them out and said, Sirs, what must I do to be saved? And they said, Believe on the Lord Jesus Christ, and thou shalt be saved in thy house," then what's he going to say? Or John 14:6, Jesus said, "I'm the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me." Or the story of the rich man in Matthew 19:16 through 30, where Jesus went a different way. It says, "Sell what you possess and give it to the poor." But the religious don't want to hear that today, do they? If you showed that you understood all of this stuff like I do, I really wonder what he'd have to say. Sadly, I doubt we'd ever find out, because he's just running around with his straw men.
Because my response to that is, that's very interesting. That's what a lot of people think. But I want to tell you, if I believe that, I'd be an atheist too.
But most atheists don't believe that, at least most that I know. Granted, I can't exactly call him a liar, because I don't know the particular discussions that he's had, but I really find it hard to believe that he's only had those discussions. This is where we see apologists lying for the Lord and having a convenient memory, because we can see them having these conversations, especially on YouTube, and then 10 minutes later, they claim it just never happened because it no longer fits their narrative. I can't say if that's what's happening here, but it certainly is for people like Frank Turek, Sean McDowell, people like that, who have promised not to do certain things and then just continue to do them anyway when they needed to in order to make money. Religion is self-serving. It makes people into real assholes. And this guy with a smug look on his face, he comes off like one of them, doesn't he?
Now, you might be surprised. The Bible doesn't say that. Some people have said the Bible says that, but it doesn't say that. If you would be interested, I'd be glad to get together with you and take you through these 4 studies I have that will show you what it clearly says. I normally do 1 a week and space them out. I can come to your house wherever you want to do it.
But the Bible still doesn't matter. It might matter to you, but it sure doesn't matter to me. Doing a Bible study with me, ignoring the fact that I already know the Bible probably better than you do, but it's as pointless as me doing a Harry Potter study with you. You won't care because you don't accept Harry Potter as worthwhile or authoritative. I don't accept the Bible as worthwhile or authoritative. I don't care what the Bible says because the Bible hasn't been demonstrated to be factually true. You need to get there first, and you're just not. You're not even trying. So why would I want to read your big book of multiple choice if you haven't validated it beforehand? It makes no sense to me.
No pressure. I'm not going to try to get you to do something you don't want to do. And when we're done, you still might not believe it. I understand that, but at least you will know what you don't believe.
But I already know what I don't believe, and I know why I don't believe it. What's the point of this little exercise? Because if you're not proving to me that it's true, why am I wasting my time reading this silly book of mythology? It's certainly not entertaining, at least not to me. So where is this heading except to confirm that I still don't believe anything that you're saying? I already know that. Give me a better reason.
Because right now, you're rejecting it based on inaccurate information. So you still may reject it on the right information, but at least you would know what you don't believe.
I still already know that. I am rejecting it on the right information, which is that the Bible cannot be validated to be factually correct. Showing me that the Bible cannot be verified to be factually correct isn't going to change my mind. I don't care about your fifis and your faith. And here's where I have a whole lot of questions, because apparently this guy has never met someone like me. I find that really hard to believe. It's more likely that he has, and he's just conveniently leaving that out of the video because he knows it doesn't serve his purposes. But there are tons of people in my very own audience who show up and start posting ancient Hebrew and Greek and all that because they know this stuff. They know a hell of a lot more than this guy probably does. Here, he's just trying to say that atheists don't know anything because that happens to be self-serving. The people who he's actually making these videos for, well, they'll lap that up real quick. The people that he's trying to reach, that's what they want to think is true. It just isn't. We're not the bumbling, ignorant fools that he wants to believe that we are. It's why all the surveys show that atheists tend to know a whole lot more about religion than the religious do. Take that up with Pew. I mean, we're neck and neck with the Jews, who I figure are doing all this out of self-defense. We know your stuff better than you know your stuff, and we know why we reject it, and we do so for entirely rational reasons. If you want to convince us, you have to show that we're wrong, that your beliefs are demonstrably true, and I know I keep saying this, but they're not even trying to do that. It's why he's trying to do Bible studies, not provide evidence that the Bible is demonstrably true. So his whole system is fundamentally flawed. Anybody surprised by that? Because I sure know I'm not. There were a couple more seconds on the end of that, but it just wasn't worth responding to. You can go and look at it if you want, but this is really just more proof that the religious don't understand atheists and they don't want to. Granted, as I said, we just jumped in the middle of his series. This is the third, I figure, and I don't know how far it goes. I didn't go look after this. I kind of peeked in on the first couple, but there really wasn't anything here worthwhile. He didn't actually have a firm grasp on being rational or intelligent or a critical thinker, and that's what you need to have. Of course, being any of those things and applying them to your religious beliefs, that's a fast track right out of religion, right? It's how some of us left religion behind. Jerry Brandt is not impressive, and that's why he's making videos for existing Christians, not for the people that he's making all these grandiose claims about. Most atheists would just laugh at this, and I'm sure most of you out there are doing that right now. It might not be as painfully stupid as some, which really isn't saying a lot, but the second that you go into a conversation with the non-religious with only faith and fifis at hand, you are going to fail. The second that you think they're going to take the Bible seriously if you can't back it up yourself, you are going to fail. You can't start with, well, of course I'm right, and then pretend that everybody else already accepts that, which is what virtually all theists do. You have to be able to go back to square one and justify every single bit of it with evidence, and they can't do that, can they? They don't even try. They just want it to be true, and that isn't remotely impressive at all, is it? If it impresses you, let me know down in the comments, because I don't really know what to tell you. We've got a serious disparity in our evaluation of reality. But like I keep saying, they don't really care about reality at all, do they? They're just terrified of reality. They're just terrified little children hiding under the bed, wishing for an imaginary friend in the sky. And that's why they really just want to believe.